Hey there, I'm Janet Johnson. I'm here today with Rich Freider. He's the owner of 3 LearningRx's, and he is going to teach you today about what he shows in a typical consultation. And we're going to have a conversation about what he teaches in the consultation. Hey, Rich, how are you?
I'm good, Janet. How you doing today?
Good, doing great. I'm looking forward to hearing this because I have not seen this before.
Yeah, and so what we're going to cover really is like how LearningRx is different. That'll be pretty quick, but mainly it's going to be, the question I get asked a lot is, why is it that some individuals struggle with learning and others don't? And getting to the root cause and understanding what drives, either success or struggles academically is a huge part of understanding then how to help that child. So I wanted to walk through that a little bit with you today. What I was going to share was a learning model that talks about that, that basically describes how our brains function. So there's a lot of graphics on here, so let me walk you through this. But first I want to talk a little bit about how LearningRx is different, right? So how we're different is we're not a tutoring center. Most learning centers focus on tutoring. Basically, tutoring is providing more academic content if a student struggles in a certain academic area. So like if someone struggles with reading, you do more reading. If someone struggles in math, you study algebra, that kind of a thing. Tutoring isn't a bad thing to do, but what's usually happening is you're treating the symptom, never addressing, well, why is it that that student even struggles in the first place? And that would be the knowledge bank that you see on the right-hand side of the chart. That would be academic content that a student just knows, like who's the first president, George Washington, or what's 3 times 3, that's 9, right? That's information that's just known. But what I want to talk about today are cognitive skills, and cognitive skills that's our ability to process information, and that determines our ability to retain information, understand information, apply it, think quickly, all of that. So I'm just going to quickly walk through all these skills. So maybe as a parent, it'll give you some insight into areas that your child, if there is an academic struggle, why. So the first one on the left that you see is attention. And that is a huge issue. There's so many kids who really struggle staying on task, tuning out distractions. If they're listening to a lecture, they'll listen and then just like lose their focus and not be able to stay with it and miss content. Or the child who's sitting at the kitchen table doing homework and they just cannot seem to focus on the task at hand, and homework, instead of taking 30 minutes, takes 2 hours, and it's very frustrating. So attention is a skill that really undermines academic ability. And then linked to that would be processing speed. So processing speed, Janet, that's like the motor of our mind. It's how quickly our minds are able to think and function. If that's not strong, usually, again, homework takes a long time. There can be anxiety. Kids feel overwhelmed. There's a lot of kids who are in junior high, high school, even college age, where they're just overwhelmed because school moves so quickly, and processing-wise, they're not able to keep up. And working memory, that's our ability to hold information long enough to use it. So like for us as adults, that would be, where we walk into the kitchen and are standing there like, why am I here, kind of thing, which, Janet, I'm sure never happens to you, but it happens to me, unfortunately.
But that happens to all of us, yes.
Yeah, but for a child, it would be things like multi-step directions. Like if you ask your child, go put your laundry away in your second drawer, bring the trash in for me, and empty the dishwasher.
Oh, that's way too much for my kids.
Well, and if working memory isn't strong, that's going to be a struggle. And so those first 3 skills are really critical, and they comprise what's called active processing. Then there's higher thinking skills. Logic and reasoning would be an individual's ability to understand concepts, problem solve, planning, to make connections between things. That's obviously a big skill with math, or the ability to organize your thinking. Or like the older child who maybe struggles with test taking and can't quite figure out multiple choice, which is deductive reasoning. Or doesn't think in an organized way as far as managing their day-to-day and always seem to be missing assignments, things like that. That's really common. Long-term memory, that is the ability to just retain information. So that affects almost everything, Janet, because one is it really affects reading. I would say 90% of the students we work with who have a reading issue, long-term memory is low, and that's often missed.
Got it.
Test-taking issues, doing the homework and not turning it in. The other effect it has is it makes learning hard, because every year students are learning information they need to know and retain and bring with them the next year. And if they're not doing that, if they're not retaining it, then when they go to learn additional information, it's a lot harder than it should be because the foundation that they're building on isn't there. And so kids just get further and further behind as they get older. Visual processing would be spatial relations, the ability to think in pictures and images. It's a really important math skill. It's a really important skill for reading comprehension, the ability to picture. And then auditory processing, that is basically our ability to segment and analyze sounds and hear distinctions in sounds. And when that's not strong, reading's almost always a struggle. So the point is, if any of these skills aren't as strong as they need to be, it makes learning really difficult. And even if it's just a couple of skills that are low, it's going to make school really hard for those individuals. So the key is to understand why a student struggles. And almost always, if there's a consistent academic struggle, it's because some of these skills aren't strong. And the good news is these skills are improvable. You can strengthen these skills, which is what we do at LearningRx.
So are some more important than others? Does that make a difference at all?
Yeah, good question. I mean, they're all really important. I would say there's two really common profiles that we see. I mean, we see pretty much every profile, but
sure,
it's extremely common, Janet, in that first group with attention, working memory, and processing speed, that active processing, when that combination of skills is low, it really undermines kids academically. For example, we work with so many kids who have strong logic and reasoning. Like their logic and reasoning might be in the 80th, 90th percentile, right? And so the parents, the teachers see all this potential, like, wow, my child is really smart. But then often it's like, well, why then are they getting C's and D's? And the reason very often is because attention, working memory, and processing speed aren't strong. And so as you see, those are the input into the learning process, right? So even if logic and reasoning is strong, if my child can't pay attention, or can't process quickly enough to keep up with a lecture, or can't think sequentially with working memory and hold those thoughts while problem solving or working through something, it almost doesn't matter how strong logic is, because if it doesn't even get there, it's really undermining that skill. And you get this dynamic of a child who seems really bright and never reaching his or her potential. And a lot of times parents assume and teachers assume it's just a motivation issue because they see the smarts. But actually, it's a lot of these active processing and attention issues that are really undermining kids, and they just get frustrated. So that's one. The other one that's really common is on the reading side. We work with tons of kids who struggle with reading. Our average reading or word attack gain is 3.1 years, which is a huge jump. And the reason we get such big jumps, Janet, is because we're getting to the root cause. So like I kind of shared, almost always if there's a reading struggle, things like long-term memory are weak, and that's really commonly missed. And long-term memory would be the ability to remember sight words, or to remember that the word enough is spelled E-N-O-U-G-H, right? Which makes no sense, unfortunately.
No, it doesn't.
That's how English is, our language is. So if long-term memory is not strong, kids are going to struggle there. The other is auditory processing, or also phonemic awareness. It's the ability to hear the sounds correctly. And when that's not strong, kids lack that natural ability to pick up reading. That's the most common issue. In fact, there's been government studies that show that the biggest underlying skill related to reading is auditory processing. When those skills aren't strong, it really makes learning or reading difficult for kids. And that's whether it's just a general learning or reading struggle, or if it's actually dyslexia. That's usually how dyslexia often shows up on our profiles. And the good news is we can overcome that because we're getting to the root cause, and that's why we have such a big gain typically in the reading side. So yeah, so that is basically what we do and how we improve underlying cognitive skills or improve learning, and that's really the root cause of most learning struggles. And what we do at LearningRx is identify why. So we do an initial assessment to figure out why, the Woodcock-Johnson 3 Cognitive Abilities Battery. And the most important is after we figure out why the child struggles, we develop a customized program to overcome it. And our gains are significant.
Neat, neat. See, that makes sense. So you're focusing in on the specific issue and honing in on that with your program.
Exactly. So, and that is really what's key, because again, tutoring's not a bad thing to do, Janet, but it's almost always treating the symptom, and it's never addressing why the child struggles. And so what happens is the next year, maybe tutoring got them through that school year, they go to the next year and the academics is a little tougher, and then guess what? You need more tutoring. And so you just stay in this constant cycle of academic catch-up because you're never addressing the root cause. when you work with LearningRx, we're actually changing the way the brain is functioning and strengthen those skills, which enables so many individuals to actually overcome the issue for good, and not have to go forward in that frustrating cycle of always being behind, always needing extra help. Because the other big benefit of what we do, Janet, is the gains that our students achieve here stick. So we do an assessment up front, at the end, and also a year after students complete the program, and have a 98% retention rate. So you can get your child where they need to be academically, typically, and then they're set up for those more difficult grade levels ahead for their entire academic career. So we can get huge results with that. So
Rich, what would you suggest to somebody watching this right now that has an interest in learning some more?
Yeah, so a great next step would be to call us and schedule an assessment. Right now, over the summer, we're offering our assessments for $100 off. It's usually $199. It's only $99, which, you know, the assessment alone is hugely valuable because we test all those areas that I just walked through, and it's an age equivalency. It'll identify your child's strengths and weaknesses and tell you why they're struggling, and that price also includes a follow-up consultation where we would meet with me or the director at the center, and we can walk through all of that and then figure out the plan also that works for them to overcome it. So give us a call at one of our centers, mention the $100 off special, which we can get you that for $99, and you're off. You know, you've taken the next step to help your child finally overcome the academic struggles they've been experiencing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
We're going to put that in the description wherever they're watching this. Might be on Facebook, might be on YouTube, but we will make sure that there's a link to it so that they can check out more information on LearningRx.
Awesome. Sounds good, Janet. Thanks.
Thank you, Rich. Have a good one.
You too. Bye-bye.